Once upon a time, in a bustling city, there lived a young woman named Sarah. She was 23 years old and lived in a small apartment with her older sister Emma. Sarah had always been known as the dreamer in the family. While everyone else rushed around with busy schedules and endless to-do lists, Sarah preferred to take her time. She would spend hours sitting by the window, watching the world go by, lost in her thoughts. Her family and friends often called her lazy. They would say things like, "Sarah, you're wasting your potential. When will you finally get serious about life?" These words hurt deeply, but Sarah had learned to ignore them. She knew she wasn't lazy in the traditional sense. Her mind was always active, always creating, always imagining possibilities that others couldn't see. Sarah worked part-time at a local bookstore. It was a quiet job that suited her personality perfectly. She could organize books, help customers find what they needed, and still have time to read during slow periods. But her supervisor, Mr. Peterson, was not impressed with her relaxed approach to work. He constantly reminded her that she needed to move faster, work harder, and show more enthusiasm. One particular morning, Sarah arrived at work to find Mr. Peterson waiting for her with a stern expression. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, gesturing toward his small office behind the counter. Sarah followed him, already knowing what this conversation would be about. She had heard it many times before. "I've been watching your performance over the past few months," Mr. Peterson began, sitting behind his cluttered desk. "While you're not making major mistakes, you're not showing the drive and energy that we expect from our employees. Customers have mentioned that you seem disinterested, and your sales numbers are below average." Sarah listened quietly, feeling the familiar weight of disappointment settling in her chest. She wanted to explain that she cared deeply about her work, that she helped customers find exactly what they were looking for, that she created beautiful displays that made people want to browse longer. But she knew Mr. Peterson wouldn't understand. "I'm giving you 1 month to show significant improvement," he continued. "If things don't change, we'll have to consider other options." The message was clear. Sarah nodded and returned to her duties, but inside, something had shifted. For the first time in years, she felt truly angry about being misunderstood. That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment, staring at a letter that had arrived in the mail. It was an invitation to submit a proposal for the city's annual community improvement competition. The winner would receive funding to implement their idea and recognition from the mayor himself. Sarah had heard about this competition before, but had never considered participating. As she read the details, an idea began forming in her mind. She had always noticed how many people in her neighborhood seemed disconnected from each other. Everyone was always rushing, always busy, but nobody really talked to their neighbors anymore. The elderly woman next door, Mrs. Chen, had mentioned several times how lonely she felt. The young family across the street struggled with their garden because they didn't know much about plants. The teenager down the hall was brilliant with computers, but had no one to share his knowledge with. What if there was a way to bring everyone together? What if she could create something that would help people connect and support each other? Sarah's mind began racing with possibilities. She could see it clearly. A community center that wasn't just a building, but a living, breathing space where people could share skills, tell stories, and build real relationships. For the first time in months, Sarah felt genuinely excited about something. She grabbed a notebook and began writing down her ideas. She sketched layouts, made lists of activities, and outlined how the center could operate. Hours passed without her noticing. When she finally looked up, it was past midnight, and her notebook was filled with detailed plans. The next morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of purpose. she hadn't felt in years. She realized that what others called laziness had actually been her way of observing and understanding the world around her. All those hours of watching and thinking hadn't been wasted. They had been preparation for this moment. At work that day, Sarah approached her tasks differently. She still moved at her own pace, but now she had a goal that mattered to her. During her lunch break, she researched community centres in other cities. She looked up successful examples, studied their programs, and took notes on what made them effective. When customers came into the bookstore, Sarah found herself asking them about their interests and hobbies. She discovered that the elderly man who bought mystery novels every week had been a detective for 30 years. The young mother who browsed the parenting section was actually a professional chef who had given up her career to raise her children. The quiet teenager who spent hours in the science fiction section was teaching himself programming languages. Each conversation gave Sarah new ideas for her community centre proposal. She began to see that everyone had something valuable to offer, but they lacked a place and opportunity to share it. Her project could be the bridge that connected all these hidden talents and interests. As the days passed, Sarah worked on her proposal every spare moment. She visited potential locations, interviewed neighbours about their needs and interests, and researched funding options. She discovered that several local businesses were looking for ways to support community initiatives. A nearby restaurant was willing to donate space for cooking classes. The library wanted to expand its programming, but lacked the facilities. Even the high school was interested in providing student volunteers. Sarah's sister Emma noticed the change in her immediately. "You seem different lately," Emma observed one evening as they shared dinner. "More focused, more energetic. What's going on?" Sarah explained her project, showing Emma the detailed plans she had developed. Emma was amazed. "I had no idea you were thinking about all of this," she said. "This is incredible, Sarah. You've thought of everything." For the first time, Sarah felt truly seen by her sister. She realized that her apparent laziness had been masking something much more powerful: the ability to observe deeply, to understand what people really needed, and to imagine creative solutions that others might miss. But as the submission deadline approached, Sarah faced her biggest challenge yet. She would have to present her proposal in front of a panel of judges, including successful business owners, city council members, and community leaders. These were exactly the kind of people who had always dismissed her as lazy or unmotivated. The thought of standing in front of them, defending her ideas, filled Sarah with both excitement and terror. This would be her chance to prove that her different approach to life had value, but it would also mean putting herself and her dreams on the line in a way she had never done before. Sarah knew that this presentation would determine not just whether her project got funded, but whether she could finally prove to herself and others that being different didn't mean being lesser. The real test of overcoming laziness wasn't about moving faster or working longer hours. It was about finding the courage to show the world what she was truly capable of achieving. The week before the presentation, Sarah threw herself into preparation with an intensity that surprised even her. She practiced her speech in front of the mirror, refined her visual aids, and rehearsed answers to potential questions. Her apartment became a workshop of creativity, with charts taped to walls and prototype materials scattered across every surface. Emma watched her sister transform before her eyes. "You know, Sarah, I owe you an apology," she said one evening. "I used to think you were just avoiding responsibility, but now I see you are actually studying life itself. You understand people in ways that I never took time to notice." Sarah smiled. feeling a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. But doubt still crept in during quiet moments. What if the judges saw her the same way everyone else had? What if they dismissed her ideas before she even had a chance to explain them properly? What if her different perspective wasn't actually valuable after all? The night before the presentation, Sarah barely slept. She reviewed her notes one final time, making small adjustments to her speech. She had prepared 3 different versions. One focused on the financial benefits, another emphasizing social impact, and a third highlighting the innovative approach. She would have to read the room and choose the right angle. Morning arrived with grey clouds and light rain. Sarah chose her outfit carefully, selecting clothes that made her feel confident but authentic. As she walked to the City Hall building where the presentations would take place, she reminded herself of all the conversations she'd had with neighbours, all the research she'd conducted, all the nights spent planning and dreaming. The waiting room was filled with other competitors, most of them in expensive suits, carrying professional portfolios and speaking in confident voices about their business plans. Sarah felt a familiar wave of self-doubt wash over her. These people looked like they belonged here. They looked successful, driven, ambitious in all the ways she had never been. But then she remembered Mrs. Chen's face when Sarah had asked about her loneliness. She remembered the excitement in the teenage programmer's eyes when someone finally showed interest in his skills. She remembered the young mother who lit up when talking about the recipes she missed making. These were the people her project would serve, and they deserved someone who truly understood their needs. When Sarah's name was called, she walked into the presentation room with steady steps. The panel of 5 judges sat behind a long table, their expressions neutral but attentive. The room felt formal and intimidating, with its high ceilings and official portraits on the walls. "Good morning, Ms. Sarah," the lead judge began. "You have 15 minutes to present your proposal, followed by 10 minutes for questions. Please proceed." Sarah took a deep breath and began. Instead of jumping straight into facts and figures, she started with a story. She told them about Mrs. Chen, about the young family struggling with their garden, about the brilliant teenager with no one to share his passion. As she spoke, she watched the judges' faces begin to soften with recognition. "We live in a city full of experts," Sarah continued, "but we've forgotten how to learn from each other. My proposal isn't just about creating a community centre, it's about rebuilding the connections that make neighbourhoods feel like home." She walked them through her detailed plans, explaining how different spaces would serve different purposes while maintaining flexibility for changing needs. She showed them the financial projections, the partnership agreements she had secured, and the survey results from her neighbourhood research. But what really captured their attention was her vision for programming. Sarah described monthly skill-sharing sessions where community members would teach each other everything from cooking traditional recipes to basic computer skills. She outlined intergenerational storytelling events where older residents could share their experiences with younger neighbours. She explained her plan for collaborative projects that would beautify public spaces while bringing people together. "The beauty of this approach," Sarah explained, "is that everyone becomes both a teacher and a student. We're not just consuming services, we're creating value for each other." One judge leaned forward with interest. "This is quite different from the other proposals we've seen today. Most focus on bringing external resources to the community. You're talking about activating resources that already exist within the community itself." "Exactly," Sarah replied, feeling her confidence grow. "We have all the expertise we need right here. We just need a way to connect it." The questions that followed challenged her to think deeper about logistics, sustainability, and scalability. But Sarah found herself answering with clarity and conviction. All those hours of observation and reflection had prepared her for this moment. She understood not just what she wanted to create, but why it mattered and how it could work. When the presentation ended, Sarah felt simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. She had done something she never thought possible. She had stood in front of successful, driven people and presented her ideas with confidence. Whether she won or lost, she had proven something important to herself. Walking home through the city streets, Sarah noticed things differently than before. She saw the potential connections everywhere. The elderly man feeding pigeons who could teach children about wildlife. The street musician who could lead music therapy sessions. The small business owner who could mentor aspiring entrepreneurs. Her phone rang as she reached her apartment building. It was Emma, calling to ask how the presentation had gone. As Sarah described the experience, she realized that something fundamental had shifted inside her. The person who had walked into that room was not the same person who had walked out. "I'm proud of you," Emma said. "Regardless of what happens with the competition, you've already won something more important. You found your voice." That evening, Sarah sat by her window as she had done countless times before. But now, instead of just watching the world go by, she was planning how to change it. Win or lose, she knew this was only the beginning of proving what she was truly capable of achieving. 2 weeks later, Sarah was organizing books at the store when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Her heart raced as she recognized the voice on the other end. "Miss Sarah, this is Director Matthews from the Community Improvement Committee. Could you please come to City Hall this afternoon? We'd like to discuss your proposal with you." Sarah's hands trembled as she hung up the phone. Mr. Peterson noticed her distraction and frowned. "Sarah, you seem to be daydreaming again. We have customers waiting." But for once, his criticism didn't affect her. Something much more important was happening. At City Hall, Sarah was led into the same room where she had presented. This time, only Director Matthews and 2 other committee members were present. The atmosphere felt less formal, almost friendly. Director Matthews smiled as Sarah took her seat. "Sarah, I want to start by saying that your presentation was remarkable. In 20 years of reviewing community proposals, I've never seen someone understand neighborhood dynamics the way you do. Your research was thorough, your vision was clear, and your passion was genuine." Sarah felt her chest tighten with anticipation. Was this good news or just a kind rejection? "However," Director Matthews continued, "we have some concerns about implementation. Your idea is beautiful, but can someone with your background actually manage a project of this scale? We're talking about significant funding, multiple partnerships, and community oversight. This requires strong leadership and business experience." There it was again. The same doubt that had followed Sarah her entire life, just dressed up in professional language. They loved her ideas, but questioned whether she was capable of executing them. Sarah felt the familiar urge to shrink back, to accept their assessment and walk away quietly. Instead, she took a deep breath and leaned forward. "Director Matthews, may I ask you something? When you look at successful community leaders, what do you see? Do you see people who move quickly and speak loudly? Or do you see people who truly understand the communities they serve?" She continued before he could answer. "For the past month, I've spent my evenings walking through our neighborhood, talking to residents about their needs and dreams. I've discovered that Mrs. Chen, who lives alone, has 30 years of experience as a seamstress and would love to teach young people this skill. I've learned that Marcus, the teenager everyone thinks is antisocial, has already built websites for 3 local businesses. I know that the Rodriguez family grows the most beautiful vegetables but struggles with English classes for their children. Sarah's voice grew stronger with each example. I didn't learn these things by rushing through surveys or holding formal meetings. I learnt them by listening, by paying attention, by caring enough to understand what people really need, rather than what I think they should want. The committee members exchanged glances. Director Matthews nodded slowly. Those are valuable insights, Sarah. But managing budgets, coordinating schedules, handling permits and regulations, these require different skills entirely. You're absolutely right, Sarah agreed. And that's exactly why my approach works. I'm not trying to do everything myself. I'm creating a system where the community's existing expertise can flourish. Maria Santos, who runs the corner market, has 15 years of business management experience and has already agreed to help with financial oversight. Robert Kim from the Neighbourhood Association knows all the permit processes and wants to handle regulatory compliance. Janet Williams, who retired from the school district, is excited to coordinate educational programming. Sarah's story teaches us that what the world calls laziness might actually be wisdom in disguise. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from taking time to observe, to understand, and to see possibilities that others miss. When you find your true purpose, that inner fire will prove to everyone, including yourself, that you were never lazy at all. You were just waiting for the right moment to show the world what you're truly capable of achieving.